let me ask you something. Is training actually your biggest problem on your health and fitness journey right now? Or is it because there are 101 other things in life that just aren't being measured or managed properly? Now, I ask you that question because we speak to so many people that think they have to change their training program every single couple of weeks, or they need to hop from one thing to the next and chase this perfect split all of the time. And quite often, in fact, nearly in all cases, that's not the thing that's holding them back. And today, I want to show you exactly what that will look like. So, again, I come back. Ask yourself this question. Are you in, or are we in, an overloaded pandemic? So, this might already sound quite familiar. Strength has plateaued. Fat loss has potentially stalled. Energy, motivation, your ability to get up, go to the gym, your ability to push through hard sessions, you dread training potentially. Most people will look at this and think, it must be my program that's completely fucked. It must be my program that is not working. And it's not that. It's highly likely that you are missing a huge component part. And we're going to come on to what that component part is. It's total load, but there's a very, very key word for this. So many people come into this space and they think they just need to train harder. And this is where people often make it worse. So what they end up doing is they add more sessions into their training block, thinking that that's the thing that's going to take them, and the frequency is going to take them over the line. And I can assure you right now, frequency is not the thing that's going to take you over the line. They then think that they have to increase their intensity. So now they've got to add more intensity to an already overloaded system, push harder, push heavier, push, again, frequency links into this as well. And very often our body needs the opposite of that. So it's definitely not training intensity. And it's just this constant cycle of more. And we see it so rife in some of High Rocks programming, in functional fitness training, in even some of the bodybuilding splits and the bodybuilding pandemics that, I say pandemics, but bodybuilding programs that people just throw willy-nilly at people. The system is already overloaded. It's already overwhelmed. And you don't need more on top of that, because more doesn't drive adaptation. And it doesn't drive change. It does to some degree, but where does it stop? Because that's where breakdown then happens. So it's definitely not a case of more. We're just adding stress to an already overloaded system. And this is where we get it wrong. So your body doesn't separate stress. We have to understand this. Your body doesn't know the difference between training, between work, between relationships, sleep, life. It all gets thrown into the same system. It all gets thrown into the same bucket. And all of this just accumulates as stress. Stress is just stress. The body just keeps a running total. And the easiest way I can explain this to you is the bucket analogy. You have loads of different teeth back in, loads of different taps around that bucket, okay? And let's say, for example, there's 7 or 8 taps. They all drop water out of them, and every single one of them is dripping. Water, lifestyle, sleep, relationships, work-life stress, financial stress, social stress. There are so many different things that could be dripping into that bucket. And every single day, that bucket is collecting water and more and more and more. And your body just keeps a running total of that. The bucket keeps filling and keeps filling and keeps filling. And this is why we've got to understand where this stress is coming from, because it doesn't separate it in any way, shape, or form. Your nervous system and your body doesn't understand the difference between training stress and work stress. It's just stress. And that's something we have to understand. And we call this allostatic load. Allostatic load is the total amount of stress. So think about the water that's in that bucket. The water that's dropped into that bucket is every single piece of stress, every single piece that affects the total system availability. And allostatic load is essentially the cumulative biological cost of chronic stress exposure. And if allostatic load increases too much over time, this is where our nervous system, our hormonal system, our immune system, everything that demands something from us, if it's consistently bled and it's consistently dripped into the bucket of you, we aren't able to recover from that. And it's everything. It's all the time. It's adding up. And I'm going back to the taps. The taps dripping into the bucket are constantly on. And it impacts your nervous system, your hormonal system, your immune system, your endocrine system. The systems sit underneath this bucket. It's only so long until that bucket overflows and it affects those systems. And this is where your system comes under pressure all the time. And this is why I want to come back to this point, in that it is not always the training program that is the problem. It's not always the training program that is causing the issues that you probably are seeing and facing in your strength, in your fat loss, in your conditioning, in your aerobic output, in your overall capacity. And I've got to hammer this point home with so many people we speak to, because it is such an important aspect that loads of people do not consider. And this is what I want to come into. I come into this because I think it's really important that we understand it. Now, I'm going to draw a bucket. We've already discussed what the taps are that are contributing to this bucket. Okay, now this is everything that you can think of. I want you to think about all of the component parts that are going to make up what consists of stress. That's going to be things like training. It's going to be things like the food that we eat. So that's going to be down to nutrition. It's going to be the quality of our sleep. It's going to be our work-life balance, because that's not considered often enough. It's going to be relationships that you've got. Again, if there is a relationship breakdown, that's going to cause problems. It's going to cause stress. Even with friendship circles, it's going to have an effect. It could be the environment you're in. In the environment, we often miss the environment out of a conversation. If you are living in a cluttered environment, if it's constantly full of shit all the time, you've got to understand that that contributes to your total load. It's never just one piece. Now, our goal is to try and maintain a level that we can deal with. Now, if we can keep this level here, great. But again, that's not always perfect, is it? We're never going to have this situation all the time, 365 days a year, 52 weeks of the year. It's not going to happen. There will be occasions when the level will rise up, and that's going to happen. But we want to limit how many times this level goes over the top and starts overflowing and starts hitting some of the big systems that we need to think about. When we talk about our hormonal system, we talk about our immune system, we talk about our ability to function, everything is a consistent trigger into this area if we're not looking after everything. And if we ignore everything else that's draining these systems, and we don't consider all of these complex parts to the program, to your program and to your life. Doesn't matter what training program you follow, ladies and gents, you're going to fall off the edge of the earth, and you're not going to be able to have any sort of adaptation to the training stimulus that you're putting on. Now, this is the bit that gets important. Now, adaptation isn't just about training. Okay, that's the absolute key thing I need for you to understand. Adaptation is not just about training. There are so many parts to this that we've got to understand. Okay, we've got to understand. When we talk about adaptation, it is the relationship between the load that you apply and your body's ability to be able to recover from it. And if you don't have the capacity available to recover from that, then you're not going to change and adapt at all. If we have a lot of volume, if we've got a lot of load, if we've got a lot of just stuff getting thrown at you, it's highly unlikely, and we have poor recovery, we're not looking after all of those aforementioned areas that contribute to the system, you will not be able to recover and adapt from it. Conversely, if we go to the other side of the spectrum that we were just talking about, if you don't have really any load, you're not putting the effort into training, yes, you've got higher recovery because you're hardly really doing much, you're sleeping loads and just mincing it, whatever, however you want to look at it. Again, you're not going to adapt. You'll just end up stagnating. You'll sit and maintain and just fester through it all the time. This is why there's a key balance in this. We've got to get the load right. The load has to be moderate. The recovery has to be adequate. And this is why we talk about the lowest effective dose that we can give you. What is the lowest dose effect that we can give you in a training program that's going to create a stimulus? It's going to allow you to recover so that we can come back and repeat or progress that stimulus. That's simply the goal of it. It's as easy as that. Okay? And this is where you've got to understand the relationship between those two things, because it does have a huge, huge difference. And we can explain this really simply. I like using the seesaw effect here. So if we think about where we want that seesaw to sit, okay? On this side, we've got capacity. And on the other side of it, we have load. Now, of course, we want to ensure that this doesn't break down. If we get the game right here, this load versus capacity scenario is pretty easy to understand. If your capacity is higher than your load and load comes down, right, you break down. Simple. No, you adapt. You break down if the load excess beats your capacity. Now, this is where I like using a seesaw analogy when we discuss load versus capacity. On one side, we've got load, and on the other side, we've got capacity. And the easiest way to explain this in this seesaw analogy, and this is the game right here, okay? Load versus capacity is the game. If your capacity is higher than the load, guess what happens? You adapt. We see a change. However, if we were to flip that and your load went higher than your capacity, what do we think is going to happen? If the load goes higher than your capacity, you are absolutely right if you guess that you are going to break down. And this is where most people live. Okay? Most people live in this type of seesaw where they often forget about this part. Okay? Most people sit in this space where their load is up here and their capacity is down here. And this is where we often see things break, the chain breaks. And I need you to understand this load versus capacity scenario. Because if you keep pushing more load, more volume, more intensity, more frequency, and more general type of training, whatever it is that you're focusing on, and you don't have the capacity to meet those demands, you're not going to progress. And that goes with strength, it goes with aerobic capacity, it goes with conditioning, it goes with pretty much every single physical quality and physical capacity that you're trying to improve. That's why we have to understand what it is that's going on. So let me talk to you about the real drivers of change, okay? And we've got to think about these because these are often things that get overlooked and people pay lip service to this. I think I've spoken about this 150,000 million times. It's not even a number, but I generally think we've discussed this far too often, okay? These are the real drivers that when we think about every single demand in your life, in every single facet, the primary contributors that make up the most out of anything that you do, and we have this completely seen in every single possible piece of literature that we come across when we talk about adaptation and change. We've got to consider these things. We've got to consider sleep. Sleep is a big factor. We have to consider nutrition. We've got to look at the micronutrient, macronutrient quality. The foods, do we have polyphenols? Have we got fiber in our diet? High protein? Whatever goals you might have. Training, is the stimulus correct? What type of program are we following? What type of periodization model are we looking at? Are we following anything? Do we even have a goal that we're trying to work on? Work stress, life stress, is that balance in effect helping you or not? We look at relationships. Relationships are a big part of it. I ain't no fucking relationship counselor, but if the relationship at home is causing you more and more stress and it's emptying or overfilling the bucket, guess what happens? We go back to this bucket analogy that we spoke about before. If it comes too high, it overfills, it affects hormone, it affects immune system, affects your ability to show up physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, in every single way. So these are the things we've got to consider. Your environment. We've discussed the environment. I don't want to harbor on the point, but environment is a big part of it. If you're surrounded by toxic people that are constantly feeding you with shit, how are you expected to be able to perform your highest? If your environment at home, your work desk is cluttered, it's shit everywhere, your home office is cluttered, the house is cluttered, you just operate on consumerism, and all you have is just everything fucking everywhere all the time. Is it any wonder why you're probably not making progress? And then obviously the big one, recovery. These are the things that you should be tracking. And this is something that we often try and focus our energy, effort, time, and attention on. Because training for most people makes up anywhere from 4 to 8 hours of 168 hours in a week. That's an equation that you have to understand. And this is often why training alone doesn't work, because of that. Training doesn't work alone because you cannot out-train what is going on with your life, what is going on with that bucket. You can have the best program in the world, but if your lifestyle is generating more stress than you can recover from, and we go back to that seesaw analogy, if there is too much load, and this is load in every area, is it any wonder why capacity, and you don't have the capacity to hold on to doing that, is it any wonder why there are going to be problems that come? And this is what we think about. Training becomes another problem, and it doesn't become a solution because you're adding too much to it. So one of the first things we do when we're speaking to our clients, if there's things going on behind the scenes, we fix those things first before we think about what's happening with training. You're probably sat there thinking it's training that might be the issue. If you've got a plateau, if you've stalled strength, if fat loss has stalled, whatever it is, like if you're not seeing the results that you want to see in the space of time that you're seeing it, it's probably because you're not looking after all of those things. A few things worth considering. All right, these are your warning signs. Bad sleep, shit sleep, crappy sessions, irritability, cravings, motivation is really freaking low. None of these are, None of these are wanky discipline issues that often come up with people's social media posts. These are signals. These are warning signs, and these are your body's way of telling you that there is a high likelihood you're overloaded. And what we probably need to think about is looking after some of these aspects before we start even thinking about pushing training too far and too quick, too soon. And this is a big one that I want you to take away. Most people are not overtrained. Most people are not overtraining. Okay? True overtraining takes months and months and months of high volume, high intensity, high frequency level of training. It really, really does. Most people are under-recovered. Most people are under-recovered, and that's a completely different problem because it's fixable. Overtraining, personally, I think I've had it happen to me once in my life and maybe once or twice in my life. And it genuinely takes months and months for you to come back from because you just feel completely smoked in every way, shape, and form. So one thing I want you to think about here is I can promise you you're not overtraining. I promise you that in most cases, it's far more common for you to be under-recovering. And I want to give you some tools that you can use and take away. So auto-regulation is one of the first tools that I want you to think about. And this is where real coaching comes in for us. Auto-regulation is not just about playing with weight and changing weight that's on the bar, but it's adjusting training output to match where you are right now in your life based on the reality. So we adjust load, or we adjust volume, or we adjust intensity. Some days you can push, some days you need to hold, and some days you need to be able to recover. Some days you just got to pull back and say, nope, today is not that max effort day that I'm going to put. All right. And this is an intelligent way of you managing and controlling your own training inputs. That is everything that you have control over. So that's what we've got to consider. We have to look at what can we do to audit our system. And I would probably look at this in 5 categories. So we've got sleep, which is one big category. we've got energy, and that's your total energy. We've got stress, and think about stress in work-life stress, etc., whatever you need to look at. We've then got nutrition, and then the final one we have is a simple score that you can use, which is readiness. Now, all you need to do with this is grade these from 1 all the way through to 5, or however you want to look at it, and then score each of them, and then total all of those scores. So for example, if I had 5, 5, 5, 5 on every single one, that would give me a score of 25. That's a 25 total. If I'm at a 20 or a 25, that is the key for us to push. And that's what I want you to think about, okay? If I add all of these numbers together and I'm from a 20 to a 25, I'm good to go. I'm going to push. I'm going to give everything I can in training. You can ask these questions every single morning when you wake up. A really simple model we give our clients. If you're anywhere from a 13 to a 19, maybe we need to look at maintaining. Maybe we've got to control a few things. Maybe we need to pull back on some load. Maybe we want to drop some of the sets that we're doing. Maybe we just need to consider what compound lifts we're hitting. Is it high stimulus, or do we need to pull back into a moderate stimulus? And then, of course, if we're a 12 and below, these are the questions that we need to come and ask ourselves and go, right, am I going to gain from this session today? Yeah, that's how we apply it. Score these things 1 to 5, add it all up, and then you have a decision to make. If we are in the high category, we can push training. Maybe we can add a couple of extra working sets and see how we feel. If we feel really, really fucking good on that day, why not push the intensity? Why not push some of the volume a little bit? It makes sense. If we're in this place, maybe we just control, maintain, and sustain whatever's been put into the program. We follow that and we do the things that we need to do. If we're in the red zone and we're 12 and below, maybe that's an opportunity for us to recover. And now you're not guessing on one thing of, oh, I'm feeling a little bit tired today. My Whoop or my watch is telling me I'm under-recovered. You can score it based on how you feel. It gives you data. You can track this as a trend. And it gives you such an easier way to manage it. Okay, such an easier way. It removes emotion from the process. Now you're not guessing how you feel. You're measuring it. And by measuring it, you get consistency. And that's the key. Yeah, that is the key. How you act on it is probably the most important thing. Because if you ignore it, you'll likely pay for it later on. Without question, you'll likely pay for it later on. So this is where this scoring matrix comes in, and you can apply this in so many different ways. It takes 60 seconds, but your total score gives you the opportunity to make progress. All right. We've already mentioned what to do with it. Gives you a simple opportunity. Now, a really good way to do this is apply a weekly reflection prompt. Okay. Now, all I do is get my clients and my athletes to zoom out. Yeah. Where were you at your best? Which days did you score highest? Simple questions. Like, what was happening in your life that week or those days that made it good? What was in place? Where did you struggle? What drove your lowest score? Was it predictable? Could it have been managed? Could we have changed it? Could we have reduced it? What patterns existed? And these are questions that you can ask yourself. If they're happening every Monday, then maybe every Tuesday and Wednesday, that's the heaviest day for you. Potentially, it's not a good idea to put your high stimulus training days on those days. And then we can manage where that sits. That's where real progress takes place. That is how it actually happens, because you're auto-regulating and you're adjusting based on the allostatic load that's in the system. Think about that. And again, something that we do really simply. It's not rocket science. We just operate this system with every single athlete we work with, and the program is just a single variable. We adjust based on life using those scripts and using those prompts and those questions that you can ask yourself. We adjust trends and see where those trends are coming. We try and align training with where they're at and what they're doing. And the program serves the person only if we have those things in place. That's the most important thing. The program has to serve the person, not the other way around. The person doesn't just fit into the program. It has to be designed with the person in mind. That's where it sits. So, big statement to take away. The gym is a stimulus. Your lifestyle determines the results. Sleep, nutrition, stress, everything. That is where performance is built for 99.9% of, in fact, 100% of people. Yes, the gym is important. However, because the gym is creating the stimulus, but the things that you do in your life are the things that absolutely categorically determine the result that you're going to get on that program. So it's a really, really important thing to think about. The biggest thing from my side is to say, look, you're not stuck. You're just not looking at all of the principles that create overload. So you've got to look at this, audit your load, fix that. Look at the recovery. Can you protect those elements? Auto-regulate. Those things are the things that help you start moving again. Those things that are the things that allow you to make progress. You don't have to train harder and push further and do all this other shit, wanky phrases that get chucked about online. You just need to train a little bit smarter. And if you understand those three things that we've given you, the daily audit, scaling that and understanding the daily audit, scoring it in total, using those scores to apply auto-regulation, and then reflect on it every week, you'll be absolutely laughing. And you'll make such a bigger difference in your training than you probably ever have before, because you have applied the smart principles that you should be looking at with coaching. But look, I hope this video has been somewhat helpful in explaining where everything comes from when we discuss things like allostatic load, because it is not just about the training program. It is all the variables that add to the bucket. And I wanted to come on and explain this to you in detail because it's so important, because it's often misrepresented and overlooked. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed it. Check out the description. If you want any more information, by all means, jump on our email list. We give out stuff like this all the time. There's loads of information getting pumped out to all of our subscribers. And as always, thank you for watching. We look forward to welcoming you and seeing you in the next video.